Hello everyone. Today, I want to talk about three ancient money laws that are over 300 years old, but still have a powerful impact on how wealth is managed and preserved today. First, we have Gresham's law, which explains how bad money drives out good money in circulation. This means that when people have two forms of money, they tend to spend the one they perceive as less valuable and hold on to the one they see as more valuable. Next, the Cantillon Effect highlights how changes in the money supply don't affect everyone equally. When new money is injected into the economy, those who receive it first benefit the most, while those further down the line may actually face inflation or decreased purchasing power. Finally, Pareto's law, also known as the 80-20 rule, shows that a small percentage of causes often lead to a large percentage of effects. When it comes to wealth, this means that a small portion of the population controls a large portion of the wealth. Understanding these laws is crucial because they continue to shape economic behavior and financial outcomes even in our modern world. Here we have three fundamental economic laws that have shaped how wealth is built or lost over the past 3 centuries. First, Gresham's law from the 1700s tells us that bad money pushes out good money. What this means is that people tend to hold on to money that retains value while spending the money that's losing value. When credit becomes too easy, it discourages the habit of saving, which impacts financial stability. Moving to the 1730s, we encounter the Cantillon Effect, which reveals that new money doesn't reach everyone at the same time or equally. Typically, this new money goes first to asset owners, giving them an advantage. By the time workers see higher wages, prices have already risen, which can erode purchasing power. Finally, Pareto's law from the 1890s shows us that wealth naturally concentrates, with about 20% of people controlling 80% of the wealth. This concentration happens mathematically rather than through any grand conspiracy. In this system, ownership compounds wealth while wages tend to fall behind. Together, these three laws create a continuous economic engine that influences wealth distribution every day. Importantly, the system tends to reward those who understand how it works and can navigate it effectively. Here we have Gresham's law, which is summarized by the phrase, bad money pushes out good money. To put it simply, when two forms of money exist, one perceived as more valuable and the other less, people tend to spend the weaker currency while holding on to the stronger one. For example, if you have two 100 rupee notes in India, one crisp and new, the other old and torn, which one are you more likely to spend first? Usually, you'd spend the torn one and keep the good one safe. This behavior isn't just from individuals. Countries do the same by circulating weak currency while hoarding gold and other real assets. This pattern shows up repeatedly in history. In the 1700s, kings diluted gold coins to make the money supply larger. Fast forward to 1971, when President Nixon ended the gold standard, detaching currency from a physical commodity. Then in 2008, central banks responded to the financial crisis by printing trillions of dollars. The trend continued in 2020 with the massive COVID stimulus flooding the markets. Today, this cycle contributes to inflation, which slowly erodes your savings value. So what does this mean for you? With easy credit and low interest rates, saving money often doesn't pay off, pushing people toward riskier investments to grow their wealth. Unfortunately, this often favors those willing to gamble on assets, while patient savers end up losing out. It's a key dynamic to understand in today's economic environment. Let's talk about the Cantillon Effect, which explains how new money introduced by central banks doesn't reach everyone equally. Imagine when new money is printed, it flows like rain, but some fields get wet before others. The first to receive this new money are big banks and large corporations. They access it through loans and financial deals, giving them an early advantage. Next in line are investors and asset owners. Because they get money early, asset prices like stocks and real estate rise before anyone else notices. Following them are business owners, who can increase their prices ahead of rising costs, particularly before wages increase. Finally, regular workers and the salaried class receive higher wages, but only after prices have already gone up, effectively reducing their actual purchasing power. A clear example of this happened in 2008 when the U.S. Federal Reserve printed trillions of dollars. Stock markets tripled in value, and the wealth of the top 1% skyrocketed, while the average household income barely budged for years. This highlights how the distribution of new money can exacerbate economic inequality. Here we have Pareto's law, often called the 80-20 rule, which highlights a striking imbalance. Essentially, 20% of people control 80% of the wealth. This isn't just a random statistic, it's a pattern we see everywhere. For example, 20% of the clothes you own might account for 80% of what you actually wear. Similarly, 20% of customers tend to generate 80% of a company's revenue. When it comes to investing, 20% of investors own 80% of the stock market. And in the United States, the top 1% holds over 32% of all the wealth. So why does this gap keep widening? It boils down to how assets and wealth grow. Those who own assets benefit first from what's called the Cantillon Effect, the idea that money enters the economy in certain places before others, giving asset owners a head start. As asset values increase, these wealthy individuals can borrow money at low interest rates to buy even more assets, creating a cycle that compounds their wealth over time. Meanwhile, wages for workers tend to lag behind, meaning they are always trying to catch up but rarely do. This explains why wealth concentration has historically increased, especially in places like the USA. Let's think of these three laws as gears in a machine that's running nonstop. First, we have Gresham's law. This gear drives people to give up on saving and instead pursue quick profits, often by borrowing money. Next, the Cantillon effect comes into play. This causes new money to flow first to asset owners, while wage earners receive it last, if at all. Finally, Pareto's law gears up and locks in wealth concentration, meaning the wealth gap keeps widening with each cycle. Together, these laws create a system that rewards those who understand it and own assets, rather than those who simply work hard and save. Let's take a look at a 300-year pattern in economic history that really reveals some important trends. It all starts in 1694, when the Bank of England was founded. This marked the introduction of paper money, which, according to Gresham's law, immediately began to replace metal currency, causing real value to start leaving the system. Fast forward to 1971, when President Nixon ended the gold standard. This transition turned the dollar into pure credit, essentially just numbers created by banks. From that point on, debt and dollars became closely linked, and the supply of both began to explode. Then we have the 2008 global financial crisis. In response, central banks printed trillions of dollars to stabilize the system. While the stock markets recovered quickly, regular people often had to wait years for employment opportunities and wage growth. Moving to 2020, during the COVID pandemic, governments again printed massive amounts of money. Stock markets reached record highs, but the stimulus largely benefited investors who were already wealthy from the market rally. Now in 2025, we see the gap between the wealthy and the rest at record levels. The top 1% controls over 32% of U.S. wealth, up from 23% in 1989. Each crisis has only made this wealth gap bigger, and these economic forces are accelerating this trend, highlighting the persistent inequality baked into the system. Let's talk about your position in the flow of money, because this is a crucial concept when it comes to building real wealth. The uncomfortable truth is that no matter how good your job is, earning a salary alone won't be enough to create lasting financial security. The system is designed to reward ownership, not just labor. You have two basic choices. The first choice, which most people fall into, is being the last receiver. This means you depend solely on wages and salaries, keeping your money in savings accounts that often can't keep up with inflation. As a result, you feel the pinch of rising prices before you feel any benefits, and your purchasing power slowly erodes. Essentially, you're always catching the drops of money downstream, never quite getting ahead. On the other hand, the better choice is to be the first receiver. This means owning productive assets like stocks, property, or a business. When you do this, you position yourself closer to where the money enters the system, allowing you to benefit directly when asset prices rise. Wealth builds from ownership, not just from working a job. Think of money like a river. You can't stop it from flowing, but you can choose where to stand. Standing nearer to the source, at the start of the river, gives you the power to capture more of its flow and build real wealth over time. Let's go over 5 practical steps to help you work with the financial laws instead of against them. First, start owning assets. This means buying stocks, investing in mutual funds, or even starting a business. Even small investments give you skin in the game, allowing you to benefit when asset prices rise. Second, reduce your cash savings to a reasonable emergency fund of 3 to 6 months. Anything beyond that should be invested because inflation quietly erodes the value of cash left sitting idle in a savings account. Third, learn to read money flow. Keep an eye on central bank policies, interest rate changes, and government stimulus. These are crucial signals that tell you when and where money is moving in the economy. Fourth, think like an owner. Instead of just asking how to earn more money, ask yourself how you can own a piece of something that grows over time. Earning helps maintain your lifestyle, but ownership is what builds lasting wealth. Finally, avoid bad debt. Never borrow money to buy things that lose value like cars or gadgets. Only take on debt for assets that either appreciate or generate income. This mindset keeps you financially healthy and focused on building wealth. The rich aren't smarter than you. They simply learned the rules earlier. Now that you know these principles, you're empowered to change your position within the system. You might not be able to change the system itself, but you can change where you stand in it. To do this, position yourself as a first receiver. Focus on owning assets so the financial laws work in your favor, not against you. Remember Gresham's law, which teaches us to protect value by owning strong assets rather than just holding what's less valuable. The Cantillon Effect reminds us to get closer to money flows, to be among the first to access and leverage wealth. And then there's Pareto's law, which shows that joining the top 20% means focusing on owning assets rather than just earning a paycheck. By keeping these concepts in mind and applying them, you set yourself up for long-term financial success. If you have any questions or want to learn more, feel free to reach out via email or phone. I'm here to help guide you on this journey.